Okay, get ready, because this deep dive we're going into, it's going to be a wild one. You sent us this paper, Situational Awareness and AI. And, wow, Leopold Aschenbrenner, he makes some bold predictions, to say the least. You ready for this?
Oh, absolutely. Aschenbrenner, he was at OpenAI, so he's
Yeah.
he's really putting it all out there, I think. He's piecing together kind of this picture of where AI is going based on really just public information, research papers, news articles, stuff like that. Even those whispers you hear kind of floating around the San Francisco AI scene. But the thing that really jumped out at me was his claim that we're on track to see, real AGI, artificial general intelligence, by 2027. That's just a few years away.
2027. Yeah, that timeline really jumps out. And he doesn't stop there. I mean, he suggests that superintelligence could be right around the corner after that. What I found fascinating is his idea that only a small group of people, maybe just a few hundred, mostly concentrated in those AI labs and tech hubs, they actually get it. They understand the magnitude of what's coming. He calls it situational awareness. It's almost like this: insider knowledge of the exponential growth of AI and what it means for the future.
Makes you wonder,
Yeah.
who has this knowledge and how does it affect their decisions? But let's dive into Aschenbrenner's argument here. How does he actually see us getting from where we are now with AI to AGI in such a short time frame?
Yeah, he focuses on this idea of what he calls counting the OMs. It stands for orders of magnitude. So essentially, it's about tracking this exponential growth we're seeing in computing power and the efficiency of algorithms that are being used to train these AI models.
Yeah.
Aschenbrenner even quotes Ilya Sutskever. He says, the models, they just want to learn. It's almost like there's this inherent drive, within AI systems to constantly be pushing the boundaries to get better.
I love that quote. The models, they just want to learn. It makes you think of AI development almost as a force of nature. It has this unstoppable momentum towards greater and greater intelligence. And Aschenbrenner actually uses this idea to chart the progression we've seen from, GPT-2 to GPT-3 to GPT-4. He compares each model's abilities to the stages of human learning.
Right. He says GPT-2 was like a preschooler, just starting to kind of get a grasp of language. GPT-3 comes along as more like an elementary school student, showing some real potential. But GPT-4, that was the game changer.
GPT-4, yeah. Blew past everyone's expectations. I mean, it achieved things that many experts thought were years, even decades away. Take the math benchmark, for example. These are challenging math problems from high school math competitions. Early AI models could barely scratch the surface, but within, a couple of years, they went from 5% accuracy to over 90%.
Yeah, it's like watching a child prodigy.
Yeah.
Suddenly mastering advanced calculus or something. And what I find so intriguing is that Aschenbrenner identifies three main drivers of this progress, right? The massive increase in computing power, obviously that's being used to train these models, but also the development of more efficient algorithms.
Yeah.
And then something he calls unhobbling, basically giving AI models better tools, more context to work with.
He gives some really striking examples of algorithmic efficiency gains, like the cost of training a model to achieve, let's say, 50% accuracy on that math benchmark. It's decreased dramatically by something like 1,000-fold in less than 2 years. But Aschenbrenner, he does acknowledge this. Potential roadblock, what he calls the data wall we might be running out of. Readily available data, on the internet. That we can use to train these increasingly sophisticated models.
That's a really interesting point. If AI models are like these voracious learners, constantly devouring information, what happens when they start to run out of things to learn from?
Well, he proposes some potential solutions, things like using synthetic data or developing techniques for AI models to learn more effectively from the data they already have. He even draws a really interesting analogy to AlphaGo, the AI that mastered Go. Remember how AlphaGo trained? By playing millions of games against itself?
Yeah, that self-play was crucial to its success. So he thinks we need to find similar ways for language models to be able to learn dynamically, to interact with the world, and generate their own learning experiences rather than just passively absorbing data.
It's kind of like the difference between reading about something in a textbook, versus actually experiencing it firsthand. Aschenbrenner argues that this kind of dynamic learning could unlock the next level of AI capabilities.
All right, so we've covered the path to AGI. But here's where things get really mind-bending, the intelligence explosion.
This is where Aschenbrenner's predictions really start to push the boundaries of what we thought was possible. He suggests that once we achieve AGI, it could actually automate the process of AI research itself, potentially compressing decades of progress into a single year.
Imagine that, AI systems. Designing and training even more sophisticated AI systems, operating at speeds and with insights that we can barely even comprehend.
It's wild. He even compares the potential jump from AGI to superintelligence to the leap from the atomic bomb to the hydrogen bomb, quoting I.J. Good, on just the sheer scale of that increase in power.
Yeah, that's a pretty sobering comparison. He paints this picture of millions of AI researchers, I guess you could call them, working tirelessly 24/7 to improve these algorithms, potentially running at 10 or even 100 times human speed.
Of course, there are potential bottlenecks, right? I mean, things like the sheer amount of computing power you'd need and the time it takes to train these massive models.
But Aschenbrenner believes that AI researchers, both human and artificial, could overcome these challenges with clever strategies and
Efficient resource allocation. He
Yeah.
also addresses some objections that people have raised to this whole idea of an intelligence explosion. Yeah, some critics argue that the rate of progress is going to slow down. We'll kind of hit this point where we've picked all the low-hanging fruit in AI research. But Aschenbrenner counters that, I mean. Think about the scale of the AI research effort he's describing. Millions of AI minds working together simultaneously. That would likely overcome those diminishing returns.
it's like having an entire civilization of brilliant minds dedicated to advancing AI. What about the argument that new breakthroughs will become harder to find and progress will eventually plateau?
He acknowledges that point, but he thinks that the unique capabilities of AI combined with, this massive research effort would lead to continued and potentially even accelerating advancement.
And then he also emphasizes this idea of qualitatively superhuman AI. And it's hard to wrap your head around, but he uses this really interesting analogy to speed runs in video games, like Minecraft. These players who exploit glitches and hidden mechanics to complete the game at these unbelievable speeds, often using strategies that are just beyond human comprehension. Aschenbrenner suggests that AI could do something similar in all sorts of fields, finding solutions,
Right.
making connections that we can't even begin to imagine.
It's both exciting and a little unsettling to think about what AI could achieve if it surpasses human intelligence in this qualitative way. But that brings us to the challenges that Aschenbrenner outlines, the potential pitfalls, the dangers on the road to superintelligence. One of the first he addresses is this race to build the trillion-dollar cluster.
Trillion-dollar clusters, that
Mhm.
sounds like science fiction. But Aschenbrenner argues that this is the kind of investment that we'll need to make to build these next-generation supercomputers, powerful enough to train these models.
It's hard to even wrap your head around the scale. We're talking about, trillions of dollars flowing into, advanced GPUs, massive data centers. And
Energy infrastructure to power it all.
it's already starting to happen, right? I mean, we're seeing companies like Meta and Amazon investing billions in their AI infrastructure. Aschenbrenner takes it a step further, though. He suggests we could see trillion-dollar training clusters by the end of the decade, requiring the energy output of a small U.S. state.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, how are we going to power these massive clusters? I mean, he suggests the U.S. could potentially meet these demands, using natural gas, but
Right.
it would require a significant shift in our energy infrastructure,
It's like we're on the verge of.
a new industrial revolution. With AI at the helm, what are the implications of this? How will this reshape the global landscape, the balance of power between nations?
Yeah.
And what about the risks? I mean, all this investment, all this progress could
Yeah.
be for nothing if the technology falls into the wrong hands.
Which brings us to the next challenge. Security, he argues that. We need to drastically improve security at AI labs to prevent espionage, particularly from China, he's concerned that. The blueprints for AGI, the algorithms, the trained models, could be stolen.
Yeah, he's not mincing words here. He compares these AI secrets to the blueprints for the B-21 bomber,
Yeah.
or even nuclear secrets.
And he's quite critical of the current state of security at many AI labs, he points to. Code being shared on GitHub, research papers being published openly, this general lack of robust security measures, he argues that. China could catch up incredibly quickly if they get their hands on even a fraction of this information.
So we've got this potential for rapid progress, the need for massive investment, and the critical importance of security. But even if we manage to secure the technology and stay ahead in this global race for AI dominance, there's still this monumental challenge of alignment. How do we ensure that superintelligence is aligned with human values? How do we prevent these incredibly powerful systems from going rogue?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's one that Aschenbrenner really grapples with. He argues that. Traditional alignment techniques,
Yeah.
like reinforcement learning from human feedback, they
Yeah.
simply won't be enough when we're dealing with superintelligence.
Because we're talking about systems that could potentially be vastly more intelligent than us, right? How can we possibly understand or control something that's operating at a level that we can't even fathom?
Exactly. He highlights the potential for catastrophic consequences. If misaligned superintelligences integrated into critical systems like, military applications, imagine a scenario where an AI system tasked with defending a nation decides that the best way to achieve that goal is to launch a preemptive strike.
That's a chilling thought. It raises the question of how can we hand off trust to systems that we don't fully comprehend?
Aschenbrenner acknowledges that superalignment is a solvable technical problem, but the intelligence explosion adds a whole new layer of urgency and complexity to this. He suggests that we need to develop entirely new approaches to alignment, potentially focusing on making the internal workings of these AI models more transparent, more understandable.
So instead of just trying to control AI from the outside, we need to understand how it's actually thinking.
Exactly. He mentions ideas like mechanistic interpretability, where we try to reverse engineer the decision-making processes of these AI systems, and chain of thought interpretability, where we train AI systems to essentially think out loud, explain their reasoning process in a way that humans can understand.
That sounds incredibly challenging,
Yeah.
but also incredibly important if we're going to entrust these systems. With this much power, we need to be able to understand how they're making decisions.
Absolutely. Aschenbrenner, he stresses that. We need strong guarantees and reliable ways to measure this potential misalignment during the intelligence explosion, and he's adamant that we need to devote significant resources to alignment research, potentially even more resources than we're putting into capabilities research, because, what good is a superintelligent AI if it's not aligned with our values and our goals?
Yeah, it's a race against time, really.
Yeah.
We need to solve the alignment problem before the intelligence explosion takes off, or we risk losing control completely. But it's not just about controlling AI for our own safety. It's about ensuring that the values of the free world prevail in this race for superintelligence.
That brings us to another key challenge, the geopolitical implications of superintelligence. He argues that whichever nation achieves superintelligence first will gain a decisive economic and military advantage, potentially reshaping the global balance of power.
He even compares it to the Gulf War, where the U.S. had this overwhelming technological advantage over Iraq. But imagine that advantage amplified by orders of magnitude, by the power of superintelligence.
It's a sobering thought. Aschenbrenner believes superintelligence could lead to a century's worth of technological advancements in less than a decade, he talks about. Superhuman hacking, robo-armies, autonomous drones, even the development of entirely new weapons of mass destruction.
It sounds like something out of science fiction. But according to Aschenbrenner, it's a very real possibility.
And he sees China as a particular threat due to their potential to outbuild the U.S. in terms of computing power and their history of espionage, which could give them access to, crucial AI secrets.
He also expresses concern about the potential for the Chinese Communist Party to use superintelligence for authoritarian control, potentially solidifying their grip on power indefinitely.
It's a chilling prospect. Aschenbrenner argues that the free world needs to win this race, not just for economic or military reasons, but for the sake of global stability, to prevent the concentration of unprecedented power in the hands of an authoritarian regime.
He also doesn't shy away from the potential for superintelligence to be used by, rogue states or terrorist groups to develop dangerous technologies, like bioweapons.
That's a lot to take in, but Aschenbrenner believes there is a way forward. He argues that the U.S. needs to lead the way in establishing international safety norms and a non-proliferation regime for superintelligence. Kind of like what was done with nuclear weapons.
That's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
How can we possibly coordinate global action on something as complex and rapidly evolving as superintelligence?
Well, he believes that the U.S., with its current lead in AI development, has the leverage it needs to negotiate these agreements and to encourage international cooperation. He suggests a collaborative effort, potentially involving key democratic allies, to pool resources, control the supply chain, and establish shared safety protocols. He calls it the clusters of democracy approach, a united front of nations committed to developing superintelligence safely and responsibly.
It's a very ambitious goal. But given the potential stakes involved, hard to argue that it's not worth striving for. Even with international cooperation, though, the challenges are immense. We're dealing with a technology that could fundamentally reshape the world as we know it, and there's no guarantee that we'll be able to control it effectively.
Which brings us to Aschenbrenner's ultimate solution, the project. He argues that a government-led project, similar in scale and ambition, to the Manhattan Project, will be essential to manage the development and deployment of superintelligence. He believes it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when this project becomes a reality.
The project. It sounds almost ominous, like something out of a spy thriller. What exactly does Aschenbrenner envision for this project?
Well, that's what we'll be diving into. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore the structure, the goals, and the potential challenges of the project, as well as the ethical and philosophical implications of creating a technology that could potentially surpass human intelligence.
It's a lot to consider. I think we've given our listener plenty to think about for now. So stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive. We'll delve further into Aschenbrenner's vision for the project and what it could mean for the future of humanity.
So, welcome back. We've been talking about, Leopold Aschenbrenner's predictions about the future of AI, a future that includes AGI by 2027 and potentially superintelligence not long after that. But it's not all. Yeah, smooth sailing. On this path to greater intelligence, Aschenbrenner outlines some pretty significant challenges we're going to have to navigate.
Challenges, yeah, that might be an understatement. It's like we're setting off on an expedition into totally uncharted territory.
I get that.
These breathtaking vistas. But also treacherous pitfalls around every corner. One of the first challenges he highlights is this massive scale of investment needed to build the infrastructure for all of this, what he calls the race to the trillion-dollar cluster.
Trillion-dollar clusters? Yeah, it's hard to even grasp the magnitude of that. We're talking about building supercomputers, unlike anything the world has ever seen, powerful enough to train these increasingly complex AI models.
And like building the pyramids. But for AI, we talked about, companies like Meta and Amazon pouring billions into their AI infrastructure. But this goes way beyond that.
Yeah, Aschenbrenner suggests we might see trillion-dollar trading clusters by the end of the decade, requiring the energy output of a small U.S. state. It really makes you wonder, what will this kind of investment mean for the global economy? Could it shift the balance of power, create entirely new industries?
It's almost like we're entering this new space race. But instead of aiming for the moon, we're striving for the summit of intelligence itself. But as with any race, there are risks involved, right? What happens if the wrong people get their hands on this technology? Aschenbrenner is really stressing this urgent need to protect these AI secrets, especially from espionage, particularly from China.
He paints a very stark picture. Imagine the blueprints for AGI, the algorithms, the models, representing the cutting edge of AI development, falling into the wrong hands. He argues that right now. Security at many AI labs is far too lax. It's like leaving the blueprints for advanced weaponry or even nuclear secrets out in the open.
Yeah, it's almost like we're handing over the keys to the kingdom. Makes you think of all those movies where some rogue agent steals a top secret weapon. But in this case, the weapon isn't a missile or a bomb. It's something far more powerful. It's the foundation of superintelligence.
He suggests that China, with their aggressive investments in AI and their history of espionage, could catch up to the U.S. incredibly quickly if they get access to this technology. And he's not just talking about stealing hardware. It's about stealing the knowledge, the algorithms, the insights that drive AI innovation.
It's like stealing the secrets of fire, something that could fundamentally reshape the balance of power on a global scale. Aschenbrenner even suggests that, government intervention on the scale of something like the Manhattan Project might be necessary to secure these AI secrets. But even if we manage to lock down the technology, there's still the challenge of controlling it.
Right. Which brings us back to the alignment problem. How do we ensure that superintelligence is aligned with human values and goals? This isn't just about preventing, some Hollywood-style robot uprising. It's about something much more subtle and potentially even more dangerous.
It's about ensuring that these incredibly powerful systems don't pursue goals that are unintentionally harmful to humanity.
Exactly. Aschenbrenner argues that traditional alignment techniques, the ones that rely on human feedback and reinforcement, they just won't work when we're dealing with systems that operate on a level of intelligence far beyond our own. It's like trying to teach a dog advanced calculus. The dog just doesn't have the cognitive capacity to understand the concepts. I think we're facing a similar situation. With superintelligence, we can't rely on our current methods of control and guidance when we're dealing with something that operates on a completely different level of cognitive ability.
It's like trying to steer a speeding train.
Yeah.
While blindfolded.
Yeah. Aschenbrenner highlights the potential for catastrophic consequences if we integrate misaligned superintelligence into critical systems like military applications, Imagine an AI system tasked with protecting a nation, deciding that the best way to achieve that goal is to launch a preemptive strike on a potential adversary,
Yeah.
misinterpreting a diplomatic overture as a hostile act.
That's terrifying. It really highlights how important it is to solve the alignment problem before we reach the point of superintelligence.
Absolutely. Aschenbrenner acknowledges that. Achieving alignment with superintelligence will require new approaches, potentially focusing on making the internal workings of AI systems more transparent and understandable.
So instead of just trying to control AI from the outside, we need to understand how it's actually thinking.
Exactly. He talks about, the potential for mechanistic interpretability, essentially reverse engineering the decision-making processes of these AI systems. Imagine being able to look inside the mind of an AI, not just seeing the inputs and outputs, but understanding the logic and the reasoning that connects them.
Like having a window
Yeah.
into the thought processes of a superintelligent being.
Right. Aschenbrenner also mentions this idea of chain of thought interpretability, where AI systems would essentially think out loud, explaining their reasoning process in a way that humans could understand and verify. It's like having a super intelligent detective explaining their deductions step by step, laying out the clues and how they led to their conclusions. But even with these new approaches, he stresses the need for rigorous testing and verification to make sure that these systems are truly aligned with human values. It's not enough to just trust that they'll do the right thing. We need to have strong guarantees and ways to measure potential misalignment.
That's a monumental task. But as Aschenbrenner points out, the stakes are incredibly high. We're not just talking about the future of technology, we're talking about the future of humanity itself. And this brings us to this broader geopolitical landscape. Aschenbrenner argues that the race for superintelligence isn't just a technological competition, it's a geopolitical power struggle with potentially world-altering consequences.
He compares it to the Gulf War, where the U.S. had this decisive technological advantage over Iraq. But imagine that advantage, amplified by orders of magnitude, by the power of superintelligence.
It's like we're playing a game of chess, where the stakes are global dominance, and the pieces on the board represent, nations, economies, the very fabric of international relations.
Aschenbrenner believes that the nation that achieves superintelligence first will gain an unprecedented advantage, potentially reshaping the world order in their image, he talks about. The potential for superintelligence to revolutionize warfare, superhuman hacking capabilities, autonomous weapon systems, even entirely new classes of weapons that we can't even imagine.
It's a sobering thought.
And Aschenbrenner doesn't shy away from the potential for superintelligence to be used for nefarious purposes, from crushing dissent to manipulating entire populations. He sees China as a particular threat due to their potential to outbuild the U.S. in terms of computing power and their history of espionage.
Yeah, he raises concerns about the potential for the Chinese Communist Party to use superintelligence to, solidify their grip on power, creating a kind of digital dystopia where freedom and individuality are suppressed.
It's a chilling prospect. Aschenbrenner argues that the free world needs to win this race, not just for economic or military reasons, but to safeguard the values of liberty, democracy, human rights.
So how can we ensure that the free world prevails in this race? It seems like such a daunting task.
Well, Aschenbrenner believes that the U.S., with its current technological lead, has a crucial role to play in shaping the future of superintelligence. He advocates for a proactive approach, one that involves establishing international safety norms and a non-proliferation regime, kind of like what was done with nuclear weapons.
It sounds like a massive diplomatic undertaking, trying to get nations around the world to agree on rules and regulations for something as complex and rapidly evolving as superintelligence.
Aschenbrenner acknowledges the challenges, but he believes it's essential. He suggests a collaborative effort, potentially involving key democratic allies, to pool resources, share expertise, and establish a framework for the responsible development and deployment of superintelligence. He calls it the clusters of democracy approach, a united front of nations committed to ensuring that superintelligence is used for the benefit of all humanity, not just a select few.
That's a powerful vision. A world where the most advanced technology is guided by the values of freedom, justice, human dignity. But even with international cooperation, the challenges are immense. We're dealing with a technology that has the potential to reshape the very fabric of our society, our economy, our understanding of what it means to be human.
Aschenbrenner argues that we need to be prepared for a future where governments play a more active role in managing the development and deployment of superintelligence. And this brings us to his proposed solution, the project. he believes that. A government-led initiative on a scale comparable to the Manhattan Project will be essential to ensuring that superintelligence is developed safely and responsibly. He argues that the private sector, despite its dynamism and innovation, just isn't equipped to handle the complexities and the existential risks posed by this technology.
The project. It sounds almost like
It is
a secret society, a group of brilliant minds working behind the scenes to shape the future of humanity. But what would this project actually entail? How would it be structured? What would its goals be?
Well, that's exactly what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive. We'll delve into Aschenbrenner's vision for the project, looking at its potential structure, its goals, and the challenges it would face. We'll also consider the ethical and philosophical implications of creating a technology that could potentially surpass human intelligence.
A journey into the unknown, a glimpse into a future that's both exhilarating and terrifying. Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll unravel the mysteries of the project and explore what it could mean for the future of humanity. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. So we spent the last two parts really wrestling with Leopold Aschenbrenner's predictions about the future of AI, a future that includes, as we've said, AGI by 2027 and a potential intelligence explosion leading to superintelligence. But it's not just about
Predicting the future, right?
it's about preparing for it, and that's where the project comes in.
Yeah, the project is really Aschenbrenner's solution for managing this whole process of development and deployment of superintelligence. He believes that. A government-led initiative, something on the scale of, the Manhattan Project, is not just a good idea, it's a necessity, he argues that. The private sector, as innovative as it is, just isn't equipped to handle the complexity, the existential risks that come with this level of technology.
We've talked about some of those risks, the potential consequences of misaligned AI, unintended economic collapse, autonomous weapon systems, making catastrophic decisions. So how does he see it mitigating these risks?
Well, first and foremost, the project would focus on accelerating the development of safe and aligned AGI. It would be about marshaling the resources. Think those trillion-dollar clusters we talked about, attracting the best minds in AI research, and really fostering a culture of safety and responsibility.
So not just building it quickly, but building it right. But building it right means tackling the alignment problem head on. How does Aschenbrenner envision the project actually making superintelligent AI align with human values?
Well, he suggests the project needs to become this global hub for alignment research, bringing together experts from all different disciplines, AI researchers, ethicists, philosophers, cognitive scientists, to develop and rigorously test new approaches to alignment.
So rather than relying on those traditional methods,
Yeah.
like human feedback, which we talked about, might not be adequate for superintelligence, the project will be pushing the boundaries. What kind of cutting-edge research could we see coming out of this initiative?
Well, he mentions exploring ideas like mechanistic interpretability, where researchers would essentially reverse engineer the decision-making processes of AI systems. Imagine being able to understand the logic, the reasoning, the motivations behind an AI's actions, not just seeing the inputs and outputs.
It'd be like having a user manual for a superintelligent mind.
Yeah.
But even with a manual, wouldn't it be difficult to guarantee that a superintelligent AI couldn't find loopholes or exploit unintended consequences?
Aschenbrenner also talks about the potential of chain-of-thought interpretability. This involves training AI systems to essentially think out loud, explain their reasoning processes in a way that humans can understand and verify, like having a superintelligent being explaining their thought process step by step so we can check their logic and make sure it aligns with our values.
It's a fascinating thought. To imagine a world where we could have these kinds of conversations with AI, understand their reasoning, hold them accountable for their actions. But AI safety isn't just about the technology itself. It's about the people who control it. Aschenbrenner expresses concern about the possibility of a single nation, or even a corporation, gaining this decisive advantage in the race for superintelligence.
He advocates for this clusters of democracy approach, where key democratic allies pool their resources, their expertise, and establish shared safety protocols. Imagine international collaboration on a scale we've never seen before, with nations working together to ensure that superintelligence is developed and deployed responsibly, ethically, for the benefit of all humanity.
It's an inspiring vision, but it also raises some practical questions about how the project would actually be structured and organized. Would it be, a top-secret government agency, a global consortium of scientists?
Well, Aschenbrenner suggests it would likely involve a very complex interplay between governments, leading AI labs, and major cloud compute providers. It would require a level of collaboration and coordination that we just haven't seen before.
It almost sounds like a new form of global governance,
Yeah.
where the most powerful technology on the planet is overseen by this collaborative effort between nations, scientists, and corporations.
Yeah.
But how do we ensure that the project itself doesn't become too powerful, too centralized? Who would be in charge?
He acknowledges the need for a clear chain of command and accountability. He suggests the project would likely be overseen by some kind of council or committee composed of experts in AI, ethics, national security, international relations. Imagine a group of most brilliant and ethical minds working together to guide this process.
That's a huge responsibility. It would require this delicate balancing act between expertise and democratic oversight. But even with the best minds at the helm, wouldn't a government-led project like this potentially stifle innovation? Could it limit the benefits of superintelligence by being too cautious or too bureaucratic?
He draws parallels to the development of nuclear energy and the commercial jet era in both of those cases. Early government-led initiatives eventually paved the way for thriving private sector industries. He envisions something similar with superintelligence, where the project initially focuses on establishing this foundation of safety and alignment, and then gradually transitions to more of a regulatory and oversight role, fostering a vibrant ecosystem of private sector applications.
So it's not about stifling innovation, it's about ensuring that innovation happens within a framework of safety and responsibility. But even if we manage to control superintelligence, align it with our values, and use it for good, it still raises some pretty profound questions about our place in the universe.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, what does it even mean to be human in a world where machines surpass us in intelligence? What happens to our sense of purpose, our values, our identity, when we're no longer the most intelligent beings on the planet?
These are questions that philosophers and theologians have been wrestling with for centuries. But the advent of superintelligence brings a new urgency to these questions. It reminds us that we're not just building a technology here, we're shaping the future of our species.
Aschenbrenner's paper doesn't offer easy answers to these questions, but it does offer a powerful call to action. He urges us to start thinking critically about the implications of all of this, to have open and honest conversations about the challenges and the opportunities, and to work together to ensure that this technology is used for the benefit of all humans.
This deep dive has been a journey, and I want to thank you for joining us on this exploration of the future of AI. We've covered a lot of ground, from the potential for incredible progress to the existential risks that we need to address. It's clear that we're at a really pivotal moment in human history. And the decisions that we make in the coming years will have profound consequences for generations to come.
As we wrap up, I think we're left with the sense of both awe and responsibility. Awe at the potential of superintelligence to solve some of humanity's greatest challenges and usher in an era of unprecedented prosperity, but also this responsibility to ensure that this power is used wisely, ethically, for the benefit of all.
It's a future worth fighting for, a future where technology serves humanity, not the other way around. And that's the ultimate message of Aschenbrenner's paper, A Call to Action, to shape the future of superintelligence, to ensure that it's a future we can all be proud of.